It's kind of weird talking about these crossover fights because you're also addressing part of the audience who are more familiar with MMA. Perhaps they've just watched boxing for the first time or a big fight. So they're kind of stenciling their own understanding of how fights work onto boxing, or they're getting overexcited, as many people did with what Ngannou managed to do against Fury. And they're forgetting just really basic cliche things almost in boxing. Say, for instance, styles make fights. Well, I think what we saw last Saturday was really a combination between efficiency on Anthony Joshua's behalf and inexperience, ultimately, on Ngannou's. But I'm going to pick out three things here, which I think are the main takeaways from that absolute demolition job. And the first one is going to be that one good performance, a losing performance at that, it wasn't a robbery, does not make you a top 10 fighter. Fighters who eventually, usually enter the top 10 in the traditional manner, have done so through climbing their way up, establishing that they're, say, in my country, British level, then European, and then they start putting some heat on the proper contenders. That's how it's done. Now, when we factor in it was a Fury, who of course was not in good shape, who is probably past his prime now, you need more evidence to be able to make such a claim like, oh, this complete novice is now a top 10 guy. And the reason I emphasize that is I may be talking here to the more unaware MMA fans who are watching this, is that even top fighters, if they're not ready, they can look terrible. It's all about preparation. You may have heard the saying before that it's about some guys fight down to the level of their opposition. And if they don't take somebody seriously, somebody who usually looks $1,000,000 can look very poor. I.e., it's not a proper representation of what is when they're both at their best. And then when we factor in that Anthony Joshua, who's always been good at injecting hard counters, is likely a bad styles matchup for Ngannou's brand of boxing as well. And then, of course, that brings us on to the point of Ngannou's chin. We've heard people call it out now a few times after the result. Oh, you said he could take elbows, you said he could take kicks. Yeah, it's not the same thing, of course. And it's not just to do with how hard Anthony Joshua, who's always had quick hands, who is 250 pounds of muscle, can punch in absolute terms. It's more about how we set it up. With all those broed out videos of, oh, look how hard Ngannou gets on the punch machine, we forget the fact that the real emphasis should be on who's the best puncher. When we look at someone like Joe Louis all those years ago, why is he often rated the #1 puncher of all time? It's because he could punch with both hands, he could set it up, he had all kinds of tools and ingredients that went into that deadly recipe. And Joshua's always been good at creating space, doing the pull counter. He did a variation of it against Charles Martin when he won that IBF belt many years ago now. A little twist, little fall into my space, bang. You weren't properly prepared. And in Ngannou, I think he may have just seen that punch a split second before it landed for the second knockdown, but nowhere near enough preparation to be able to brace properly, and yet completely scrambled him. Having kicks thrown at you is all well and good, but it's all about how it is set up. When Joshua caught Ngannou for that second knockdown, he basically caught him in no man's land. And because of how spectacular and brutal, yes, this deserved the word brutal, the knockout was, it sadly is kind of underlying the fact that most fans, the casuals, the people who will pay for the seats, still really want Joshua Fury. They consider that the main fight. That's the fight that's got more narrative than Usyk Fury does. That's between the two bigger guys. And because Joshua gets that spectacular knockout, even though it was against basically a lot of people agree a novice in boxing terms, in the professional ranks at least, that has buzzed the audience probably more than Usyk has ever done. There's two different lanes there between how good you are and how much you excite people. Boxing is ultimately a spectator sport. Where there's excitement, there's money, and that's why Eddie Hearn got into the ring then and was a little bit disrespectful, really, towards Alexander Usyk by almost kind of pretending that he doesn't exist. He's just thinking, look, hopefully Fury gets rid of him, then we get onto the main fight, the real moneymaker. But man, even though I agree and enjoy the fact Joshua is improving, he's really dialed in now. Usyk is still beating him over 24 rounds. And what did he win? About 18 of those rounds? We need to put a bit of respect on the Ukrainian's name, who very well may beat Tyson Fury. And then, even if it was still to make a lot of money, does Joshua even deserve a third fight against Usyk? 2 conclusive losses. We wouldn't be talking about the prospect of a third fight with anyone else. But yeah, ultimately, spectacular knockout. AJ, as people say, doing what he should have done, what a top boxer should. I don't actually necessarily think Ngannou would have done that badly, but this was a bad combination of, I think, probably a poor styles matchup. AJ's always been hard with the counters. Right now, he's really in his groove, and we just saw Ngannou, not enough seasoning. He's reacting to the feints. Yeah, he got buried. But yeah, give me your opinion on this one. What did you make of it all? And as always, spoons up.